What's up, everyone? EJK here. This is like my fifth take of the stream intro. I'm just going crazy today, so I'm not even gonna introduce anything else. Let's just hop into the game because I can't even explain what the game is. Basically, it's Flash, and alright, right away, I just want to note something that it is 30 seconds into the game. And okay, so what we're going to be doing is taking a look at Flash's first-person view, and we're going to glean important information that can otherwise not be seen from his regular televised games. So, the first thing that I want to point out is immediately when the game starts, it is 7 seconds into the game, and Flash does this up until at least his first depot. Notice the first thing that he does is he starts to stack SCVs. That is the first thing he does. He does a little bit of mouse spam to warm up, but for the most part, he is focused completely on stacking SCVs. Now, for example, when I warm up and when I start a game, I eventually stack SCVs, but the first thing I do is I key all of my locations. So like I'll key my natural, my third, and then my fourth. But Flash, he hasn't even done that yet. He's just completely focused on stacking SCVs. That's the very first interesting thing that I noticed about his gameplay. And there's also very little spam involved as well. Yeah, he made a couple boxes, but for the most part, he's just focused on stacking SCVs. So his game has really already begun from here. I'm not going to really be focusing so much on mechanics, or I mean on his strategy, like having that depot placed there instead of at the wall. But I'm going to be more focused on his attention and what he is doing in this FPVOD and how he is able to perform some of his actions. So, another thing to note is that Flash is a very active minimap player as well. So, even though he may not be doing anything over here, he's going to be doing a lot of looking at the minimap over here. So, for example, if he's not doing anything like right here, he's most likely looking at the minimap. And then that SCV goes out. He doesn't need to hotkey that SCV or anything. He already sees it going out on the minimap. And now we see 2 minutes into the game, he also decides to he gets his natural setup with his location F keys, and this is really just his warm-up. His early game of what his actions consist of is kind of pretty interesting to watch. He doesn't have a lot of spam, and I said that before, but I'll kind of go into a little bit of detail of what that means. Basically, he only clicks once or twice when he does something. He doesn't like click a million. He doesn't click like 5 to 10 clicks just to build a command center, or like while he is waiting for money or anything. Like notice he just clicked there to send an SCV there, and it took like 1 second. He's not just like spamming the command center button to make that command center. He waits until exactly 400 minerals and then he places it down. That's how you get the most out of your actions, because when you are spamming like the command center button at 350 minerals and you spam it like 5 times, those are 5 other actions that could otherwise have been used to do something else, such as micro the SCV, make sure your workers are stacked, send your SCV somewhere to start building a building, actually building something, etc., etc., taking your guys off of gas, putting them on gas, moving your Reaper around, looking at the minimap. A lot of little things, and it all adds up in the long run. So we see here Flash still kind of like doing his little flurry of keys. That's more of his warm-up, and he is more focused on warming up his keyboard hand than he is his mouse hand. I think that's something very important to note. If you ever see a first-person view of someone who's just like constantly boxing at this stage of the game, then you kind of that's a good indication that they are a more mouse-oriented player. Whereas Flash's macro, which if you see here, he quickly switches between different kinds of buildings, means that he's using his hotkeys and his keyboard to do that. So he's warming up his keyboard hand rather than his mouse hand. And it also allows him to warm up kind of focusing on the minimap as well, because a useful time to look at your minimap is when you are building stuff as well. So like when you are building Like when he's just doing that flurry of actions, he can be doing that with his keyboard. His mouse can be just over here while he's doing it, and then his eyes will be over here at the mini-map looking. Or it could be up here looking at his money as well. It's very important to look at your money because that'll tell you what your supply is at. You also don't want to overmake supply depots, because overmaking supply depots is almost as bad. It's not as bad, but it's almost as bad as queuing up units or queuing up SCVs or just queuing up buildings to be built. Basically, it's money that is about to be used but is not being used immediately. So it's almost as good as just having it just piling up before actually it being spent. So that's why Flash, he always has his depots line up really, really well. And one way to do that is to keep looking at your money and keep looking at your supply count so that you know that you need to build another supply depot very soon, such as when, like, after you build a couple more SCVs and then he builds 2 more Marines, he's going to be at 58 out of 62, so he knows he's going to need another supply depot soon. A little battle going on here. He doesn't really focus on microing his units so much. Notice how he kind of is not microing his Marines. He's just focused on the Hellions, and he's not actually macroing either. He is making SCVs and he is producing some units, but for the most part, he was only focused on microing just a little bit of his Hellions. He was focused on that. And another thing that I found interesting to note is that Flash is primarily, I would call, a macro player after watching a bunch of his games, because he spends very long periods of time doing nothing but macroing. So we saw the little aggression going down at about 8 minutes. Once again, I'm not going to be too specific on the timings because that's not nearly as important as what I'm trying to cover in this game. There are a lot of other non-related timing aspects that we can learn from. So at about 8 minutes, Flash did a very, very minimal micro as well. He only microed his Hellions and he only tried to get a few probes, and he didn't really micro his Marines at all. And now it's about 9 minutes and 30 seconds into the game, and he's 100% focused on kind of just like macro. So keeping his money low, building stuff, making sure his tech is going and everything. You know, just the usual macro stuff, spending your money and improving your base infrastructure, basically. So, just keep that in the back of your head as he continues to do this, and the next time he attacks is gonna be a very, very long time away. But basically, all I'm trying to say is that Flash is a very macro-oriented player, and he focuses a lot of his attention and actions per minute on macroing, and he does some micro there, but it's very, very basic, and he almost doesn't do anything else besides keep units alive, rather than like stutter stepping units forward while keeping the units alive. Like, he doesn't do multiple actions when he's actually microing his units. He only does very limited micro. It's not to say that it's bad. It's just that I'm trying to emphasize he doesn't put as much attention into microing individual groups of units as he does his timings of his buildings, his overall econ management, and his minimap awareness as well. We see here he's kind of supply blocked. It'll happen to the best players. Getting supply blocked at about this time can be pretty common, especially if you haven't done the build before. I find it a bit interesting why he doesn't use a call down. He does have enough supply. He has about 4 scans saved up just in case of DTs. Either way. So he's moving out about now, which is about 12 minutes. So it's been about 4 minutes before he actually did anything on the minimap. And now he is simply moving his army forward to put it in an aggressive position. And he does a little bit of actions to move that Marine there to look for a third. He scans, and now his attention's mostly here. But at the same time, he's also focused on him building units, the minimap still, like seeing the units there and moving them here. to reinforce the battle. And overall, he does very, very minimal micro. So once again, he's going back to macro. He's not even, well, okay, that it's not fair to say he's not even paying attention to his units. The cool thing about Flash's play here is that he can do all of that stuff, like transfer SCVs and move the third command center there, all in like 2 actions in like half a second, and keep track of what's happening to his army just because he has the minimap there. And so even though he's like doing stuff on this side of the map, because he has really good minimap awareness, he knows when the Protoss army is going to be here and when he needs to divert his attention to the main army. A little bit of sloppy control there by Flash, because once again he's not focused so much on like doing a hot pickup and saving every single unit. He's more concerned with not losing a big chunk of units. And then he's going back to macro. He's still looking at the minimap, and it's his reaction time that really gives it away of how much he looks at the minimap, because he responds almost instantly to everything that ends up happening here. He does a little bit of stutter step here. Not the best decision though, because he is fighting units under a Guardian shield, and he ends up getting flanked and losing a bunch of his units because he did overstay his welcome and he didn't have a spotter marine over there. He does have his reinforcements coming, so it's good that the Protoss player broke out of it when he did before the reinforcements arrived. Of course, the Protoss player could have had an observer, so he knew that he had to go now better now than when those units got there, because then it would become a lot harder for him to break that contain. But now we see Flash's attack has ended, and he is going back to just macroing up normally. Notice how he's not building any more depots. I think he just built another depot as I was saying that. But normally when you are down... No, he didn't. He built an engineering base. So you don't want to build more depots than you already have. Like, it's just no use to be at 150 out of 200 supply. Those 2 extra depots could have been used, which Flash is doing, to build these 3 additional barracks faster, to build the engineering bay faster, to get his gas at his 5th and 6th base up faster. So he's approaching maxed out supply to the point where he's going to have to start a depot soon, but he doesn't do it until almost the last possible second. And we see him clicking around a frenzy on the minimap. Now we see him building, he's going to build maybe 1 or 2 depots. There we go, 1 more depot, 2 more depots to kind of like finish the max out, because he does have enough units for an additional round of production, and he has the money left over to build to spare 2 depots. We see here Flash going back more to his building, or like his infrastructure area. He's not, like, notice again how he doesn't take that much control of his army. Like, he has spotter units, of course, that's what all good players will do, and he also like has his units appropriately hotkeyed. He has 3 hotkeys for Ghost Viking, and he's also looking at the minimap. Like, every time he also like clicks the minimap is when you know he's looking at it 100%, because why wouldn't you look at the minimap if you were clicking it? Like, there he is again. So like, when he's doing nothing like that, and his screen is just kind of like frozen in place, that means he's looking at the minimap. So it really shows how much of a minimap player he is and how much he relies on the minimap. Like, there he goes again, just relying on the minimap. He's paying careful attention to where the Protoss army might be, and as soon as that comes, he immediately goes back. Of course, he was already going to go back because he just wanted to snipe the observer. We see here getting those 2 Templar, but running under a storm. That was kind of risky. If the Protoss player had a little bit more awareness of his army, he would have been able to storm a larger group of units. And then we see here this battle. Flash is more concerned with... Oh, and that's really important right there. So Flash is more concerned with getting an arc and spreading his bio army than he is about he's not microing his Vikings. He just got a couple random EMPs off. He missed the mortals. So he mostly got the Gateway Army. But also, look, he's already running away his units at that Zealot counterattack. So let's focus just looking right at the minimap, just ignoring what Flash is doing on the screen. And what we're going to be doing here is waiting for the group of Zealots to come in, and let's see how fast Flash is going to respond to it via the minimap. So he gets those 2 High Templars. The Zealots should be coming any second, and let's wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. And it's happening in the middle of this battle as well. So Flash is looking at the freaking minimap while this battle is going on. So it's 1925 and these Zealots have appeared. It's they're marching, and he gets the EMPs off. Then he kind of like starts spreading his bio army out, and then he looks at the minimap at about like 1931 and immediately moves all of his SCVs and right clicks them to that natural base, and he does that so fast as well, so that he's really efficient with his time. And then he's going to move those units to fight the Zealots as well, and then he goes back to microing as well. So like that, all of those actions were done about in a second of like kiting, of how long it takes to kite your bio army. But then he kind of slips up here. His multitasking kind of fails, and he ends up losing a bit too much. He overstayed his welcome. That Zealot harassment, he dealt with it as well as he could have at the time, but the better decision, I guess, would have just been to retreat back with your army instead of trying to engage at 2 places at once. He really was stretching his multitasking really thinly. But just really interesting things that we can learn that Flash does that we otherwise would not see in a regular VOD of his play. That he does rely so much on the minimap for things. And he also doesn't spam a lot either. A common mistake I see a lot of players do is that they spam, like if you have your army selected, they will spam like 5 to 6 clicks just to, in one place to get their army somewhere. Whereas Flash only uses one action. He uses as few actions as possible to do things in as quick as time as possible as well. So that's why he is able to get so many things done very fast as well, even though he might not have as much APM as someone like Innovation. He uses his time as effectively as possible. Not too great there. He needed his ghost to be kind of more in a together than walking in one at a time. You need the snipes to go off instantaneously, otherwise the feedback will get the ghosts. And unfortunately, he also has a lot of Vikings as well, and he ends up losing this fight because the Protoss player transitions into a Charge Law Archon Immortal army, and instead of producing additional Colossus, he ends up producing Immortals. So all of these Vikings are completely useless. Flash also gets caught out in a really, really bad position. He loses all of his ghosts. He's trying to micro his bio there. His Vikings kind of get left alone, and they kind of go AFK throughout the fight. He's not paying attention to that. So, I guess like a thing that we see here is that his multitasking kind of gets stretched in these kinds of engagements. He doesn't have the I don't think he has the he's practiced enough to be able to micro his entire army efficiently, because what we see him doing is microing only small bits of his army, primarily the bio part of it, and kiting backwards and stutter stepping backwards, and then just looking at the minimap. Like, he looks at the minimap during every fight, not after, not before, but during. So that's that's just really, really high level play if you're a minimap focused player. But if you're more of a micro focused player, then obviously you're going to be wanting to look at the screen more, so that you can kind of be able to micro all of your units more effectively, or as an army rather than individually, as we see Flash doing. Kind of like, he doesn't stutter step the Vikings. He only threw down like a couple blanketing EMPs with the ghosts. Not to say that they weren't bad. It's just that what he does with his army is he tries to give them the most efficient actions as possible while spreading his attention elsewhere. during the battles. So like instead of focusing on the Vikings and like stutter stepping with them, instead he will look at the mini map and see if anything needs to be done. Which, not to say that that's a bad thing, it's just that it takes a lot of practice to be able to look at the minimap at that time, and then keep your macro going, and also micro your army all at the same time. Which is why he is called God, because he pretty much tries to do everything. And this is a practice game, like it's not a televised game, so practice really does make perfect, and in time I think he will get to the point where he gets better army control. We see here these ghosts. They're not really doing anything. Like he moves all of his army back, and then he GGs. To be fair, he couldn't really do anything, but his ghost EMPs were really late. His army just kind of got caught out of position, mostly because he wasn't aware that the army was there. I think Flash was more concerned with going to the watchtower, and then he focused his attention elsewhere on the minimap. And then as soon as he saw that his army was getting attacked, so he goes to the minimap. Yep, so his army's going this way, and then he looks at the minimap as well. And then now he's just clicking those units, and yeah, he's going straight to the minimap, and then he sees on the minimap that this army is here, but by the time he gets there to react to it, the storms have already been thrown down, and he's already in a bad position and can no longer retreat out of it. And he ends up kind of taking a crappy engagement. That time warp gets him in a really bad spot. The EMPs come down late, everything comes down late, and GG is called. There we go. So yeah, that kind of brings a different perspective to playing Terran and playing StarCraft 2. It's not really a regular video about the strategy behind Flash's gameplay. It's more about focus on his mechanical play and where his attention is during different parts of the game. I think I will be doing a couple other ones, maybe one of his TVZ and one of his TVT, just to kind of round everything out. But it'll be very similar. You'll see a lot of similarities between this game and those other games as well, because this is kind of like what shapes Flash's style and what kind of player he is. And that's not something you can learn a new strategy in a week, but you can't change how you play the game in a week. That takes a lot of years of practice. Yeah. Alright, so yeah, that pretty much brings an end to this video. If you have any questions or comments about maybe different mechanical aspects that I might be able to help cover, I'd be more than happy to answer it. Oh, and a long time ago, a friend of mine and me, he wrote the guide and I provided the information to improving your mechanics. So if you're interested, I will leave a link on YouTube to check it out. It's kind of a long read, but it's basically if you want to either have more APM, have more efficient APM, or just become a faster player, even if you don't necessarily gain more APM, then definitely check it out and give it a read. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next video. EJK out.